Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a book that completely changed the game for millions of people when it comes to money. We're going to break down the powerful core lessons from the very beginning of Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
All right, let's just jump right in with the question for you. What were you taught about money when you were growing up? Is it stuff like save every penny or money doesn't grow on trees? Seriously, take a second and think about that very first piece of money advice you ever got, because it probably shaped your financial life way more than you think. So where does this whole idea come from? Well, the author, Robert Kiyosaki, had a pretty unique childhood. He was raised by two father figures, and they couldn't have been more different in how they saw the world, especially when it came to money.
And this is where things get really fascinating. You've got his biological father on one side, the one he calls Poor Dad. This guy was brilliant, a PhD, had a stable government job, but he died with a pile of bills. Then, on the other side, you have Rich Dad, his best friend's father. This guy dropped out of school in the 8th grade, became an entrepreneur, and ended up one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii. So how on earth does that happen? That one question is really the whole point of the book.
And here's the kicker. Both of these men were good guys. They were hardworking, successful in their own ways, and they both wanted to give him the best advice they could. The only problem? Their advice was polar opposites. Imagine being a kid and getting two completely different sets of rules for life. It forced him to do something most of us never have to. He couldn't just blindly accept what he was told. He had to stop, really think, and then choose his own path.
Now, this difference in advice wasn't just about saving versus spending. No, it went much, much deeper. We're talking about two fundamentally different philosophies, two completely different ways of seeing the world.
So, on one side, you had his poor dad, the academic, who truly believed this and taught it all the time. The love of money is the root of all evil. I mean, we've all heard that one, right? It's this idea that wanting to be wealthy is somehow a bad thing.
But then, Rich Dad comes along and just flips that idea completely on its head. He said, no, the lack of money is the root of all evil. See the difference? One dad saw the desire for money as the problem. The other saw the struggle, the fear, and the desperation caused by not having enough money as the real issue.
And this difference popped up in the way they talked every single day. Poor Dad would say things like, "I can't become rich." That phrase, "I can't," just shuts the brain down. It's not a statement of fact, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
But Rich Dad? His mindset was completely different. Even when he was flat broke, he'd say, "I am a rich man." Rich people don't do that. For him, there was a massive difference between being broke, which is just a temporary situation, and being poor, which he saw as a permanent state of mind.
Okay, so this wasn't just a bunch of clever sayings or abstract ideas. These completely opposite philosophies showed up in every single real-world choice they made, creating two totally different mindsets.
Yeah, this core thinking was like the lens through which they saw everything. It wasn't just about their bank accounts. It shaped their careers, their family lives, even how they thought about the house they lived in.
And just look at how different their actual advice was. Poor Dad said, "Study hard so you can find a good company to work for." Rich Dad said, "Study hard so you can find a good company to buy." Poor Dad would say, "The reason I'm not rich is because I have you kids." Rich Dad said, "The reason I must be rich is because I have you kids." One said, "Play it safe, don't take risks." The other said, "No, learn how to manage risk." And here's the big one. Poor Dad always said, "Our home is our biggest asset." Rich Dad taught that a house is a liability. It all boils down to one thing. One mindset is built around finding security, and the other is built around creating freedom.
Here's the perfect way to sum it all up. Poor Dad taught him how to write an amazing resume so he could get a job. Rich Dad taught him how to write a solid business plan so he could create jobs. One path trains you to be an excellent employee, the other trains you to be an owner. So picture this. You're just 9 years old, and you're standing at this fork in the road. Do you follow the safe, traditional path of your highly educated dad, or do you take the riskier, less traveled road of his entrepreneurial mentor? That's a huge choice for a kid. It brings to mind that famous Robert Frost poem, The Road Not Taken. He knew, even back then, that this decision wasn't just about money. It was about which life he was going to lead. He took the one less traveled by, and, well, that has made all the difference. And his decision wasn't just a gut feeling. It was a very deliberate process. First, he made a point to just listen to both of them, really hear them out. Then he would think about what they said. He would actively compare their two very different philosophies. And only after doing all of that
did he finally choose to follow the lessons of his rich dad.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? The lesson isn't really about getting rich quick. It's about understanding the game. Sure, money is power, but financial education, that's even more powerful. Because when you truly understand how money works, you get a kind of power that no amount of cash can buy. The power to create wealth for yourself, no matter what happens in the economy. And that really leaves us with one final question. Which dad's advice are you following right now?